I'm Christa Hill.
And I'm Renee Matsella.
And we are the founders of Tacit Edge, a tech education company dedicated to shifting the demographics of women and visible minorities graduating into product management at top companies around the world.
And this is our podcast, Product for Humans, where we explore the human side of product management. We'll answer all your burning questions like, what is product management? What is a product? How do you get started? And why do you belong in product management? That's right, because you belong. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Product for Humans Live. We're just going to give things a minute to catch up. I know that on LinkedIn, there is a little bit of a delay, but if you're just seeing this now, please, at any point in time, we've got an incredible guest joining us today. If you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. We would love to share and help out with some discovery on your side around some great career moves and some great conversation that we're going to have today with Sandi joining us today. This is huge. Sandi, this is such a pleasure. Renee and I are huge fans and have been for quite some time. And it's so funny in product management how we all kind of rotate around certain spheres.
Yeah.
And we've been rotating in each other's spheres on different axes for quite some time. And this is such a joy. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Hello, everyone.
All right. Well, Sandi, before we get going, do you want to maybe do a brief little introduction about yourself and the kind of work that you're doing right now? And then we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into some of your career greatest hits for our audience. And so we can sort of, celebrate the weird and wacky, unconventional path to product that we all have.
It has been a weird and wacky and unconventional path, I will say. So hello, everyone. Sandi Boga. I am the head of product at Impact Genome Registry, which is a company based out of Chicago, Illinois. And we are focused on basically standardizing social impact outcomes so that nonprofits can report in a consistent way and funders can actually consume the impact reporting from those nonprofits without having to ask them to each enter or fill out different information. So we're all about standardization, valuing impact and the outcomes associated with them and making sure that the market is actually able to consume those so that we can get closer to trust-based philanthropy. So if that's not your world, some of that might not mean anything to you. But I've been here for about a year and a little bit now. I was previously at Benevity, which is a Calgary-based organization. And then before that at ATB Financial and a company called Symend. I'm remote. I live in Canmore, Alberta, which is in the Rocky Mountains, for those of you who might not be aware. And I've been remote, but since before remote was cool. So before COVID happened, I was working and living from home. So it's been about 10 years now. So yeah, that's basically me in a nutshell.
Huge fans of Canmore. Shout out to all of our favorite people that live there. I feel like, Renee, we are missing the memo that we just need to be finding a remote location in Canmore to work from.
We actually have a Bull Valley Tech meetup, so I'll invite you guys to the next one and you can come out and say hello. Tracy Posanowski and a few other folks lead that. So it's been quite an interesting way to meet and connect with others in the space.
Oh my goodness, count us in. We will be there.
Yeah, does that include like a climbing meetup beforehand? Because that's
you and I can do that, and then we can go for drinks afterwards.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sounds perfect. Awesome. So, as you alluded to, you've had a few pit stops on your career, Sandi, and I would love for you to share with us, how did you discover product management? What was your first leap into the field?
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting series of events that led me to product management. I don't think product management really existed at the beginning of my career. So I actually studied to be an English teacher, crazily enough. So I was going to teach high school English. During my practicum, I realized perhaps I don't want to work with teenagers every day of my life. No offense to anyone who has teenagers, but it was a bit challenging. So from there, I actually got into adult education and I started teaching software applications. So that was really fun. And then my husband and I moved to Europe. And of course, being a non-native speaker there, I couldn't speak German when I first moved there. I started to get into technical writing and technical documentation for spin processors, which are machines that are used in the creation of microchips. So I sort of took my English and my education background, my software background, and I became a technical writer there. When I moved back to Canada, I actually combined sort of that education and tech background. And I got a job at Smart Technologies, initially as a tech writer, but then I moved into leading the instructional design and some of the professional services team. So that whole role is about teaching people how to use software and really focusing in on specific use cases, understanding the user needs, and then learning and developing development resources for them to actually enhance how they use the product. That was actually kind of when I first got exposed to product management. So Smart had a product management team, both hardware and software. And I just sort of saw the work that they were doing. And I was really curious about it because not only did they get to speak to the users and understand problems and start to do some of that investigative discovery work that you do also in instructional design, but then they got to build products that actually solved real problems. So I expressed interest to my leader, and then Smart actually had a pretty major restructuring. And unfortunately, they eliminated all of the learning and development teams. And luckily, I got spared and moved into a product management role. And so that was basically my first taste of it. I had a very seasoned leader, Giselle, her name was, and she taught me a lot about product management in the short time that we worked together. And so essentially, I got presented with a problem. We needed to help teachers understand how to use smart board interactive whiteboards in their classes. So not just as like a presentation medium, but actually to facilitate different types of group instruction. So I ended up sort of devising the solution. We partnered with the learning management system company, combined that with our e-commerce site, and then built the smart learning space. So everything from discovery to build to vendor management and then to the actual launch of it was what I got to experience when I was at Smart. It was just a fantastic experience. So I was basically hooked from then on in.
Of course, I'm on mute. I think like Smart Technologies is stuff of legend in Calgary. There's so many incredible stories of innovation early days in our ecosystem coming out of that company. And it's not a surprise to hear that like that was an inspiring environment for you to be in, from just being able to see the whole landscape of the whole life cycle of product management. It's very common in the threads that I hear about that story there. When you think about those early days then at Smart, what was the one thing about product that you were just like, I can't live without this now? Like, I'm super hooked. I want to do this, but somewhere else next. Like, how did leaving there get you to the next yes in your product journey?
Honestly, it was the ability to come up with an idea and then have to be empowered to execute on it and to build it and to bring it to life and to bring it to market and to see it grow. So like that whole process of being able to think of something and then do it and then see how people react to it and then continue to kind of learn and iterate, I just loved. And I think the fact that I have an education background, really product management is all about learning and asking questions and listening and figuring out, is this working? Is this solving the problem? Is it not? How do we pivot? Developing hypotheses. So I think that constant cycle of learning new things and being curious was really what sort of made me look for the next role. Although funnily enough, when I went to ATB after Smart, they didn't give me a job in product because I had such a strong L&D background. I came in there as a management of learning and development, but the entire time I'm like, what's happening over in product? So I ended up moving into product innovation at ATB, and then moving into formal product management there. So it was always kind of like a bit of a disjointed journey because people look at your resume and they're like, okay, you've got a master's of education. We'll give you this job. But I was always like, no, actually, I want this job over here. So luckily it's worked out.
That is incredible. So when you think, sorry, Renee, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so you kind of had to break into product twice.
Yes.
Almost.
Yeah, I did. And it was interesting because product innovation is a little bit different than formal product management because you got a lot freer reign in terms of thinking. Like you think of the company strategy kind of 3 to 5 years down. You look across, it was the financial services, the fintech landscape at the time, see what other innovations are out there and actually look at other industries to see how they've solved similar problems. So product innovation was actually hugely creative, and then understanding the other technologies that were out there, running proofs of concept, working with users, failing a lot of the time because, you develop a hypothesis. Sometimes you're wrong and sometimes you're correct. And just getting used to that motion was actually super valuable in terms of my career today, where I've got to today.
Awesome. All right. So now let's fast forward to Impact Genome. And where you are today. And looking back on an incredible career that is still, in full swing, based on what you know today to be true about product management for you and how you practice, Can you define for us or describe what you think an effective product manager does and how they operate?
Absolutely. So for me, it's really all about curiosity, number one. And then the ability to learn new things quickly. Because if you've got product management skills, you might be assigned to work on a product or an area that you're not familiar with. And you're going to have to dig in immediately and just figure it out. Like, you're not going to know everything there is to know about the fields you're in or the products and technologies that are out there, your competitors and that type of thing. So being curious, being able to learn new things quickly, being able to solve problems as they arise, or at least identify which problems need to be solved, and then come up with solutions to figure out how to solve those problems. And then ultimately rallying a group of people around a particular vision. Because I'm sure, as both of you know very well, and probably many people listening, product management, you often don't have direct leadership over the teams that you're working with. It's really all about influence. So being able to clearly articulate your vision, include other people in the development of that vision, have the humility to know when you don't know things and to be able to bring other experts in is really, really important. And then to collaborate with those folks to bring things to life. Those are all really key elements of it ultimately, because product is a team sport. And without your product designer, your technical lead, your product marketing person, the input from sales, the executive team, you are not the person who has all the answers ultimately. Any product person who thinks it's my idea, it's my product, I'm bringing this to life, I think has some learning to do, because it's really about taking the diverse ideas and opinions of others and synthesizing that into a solution that's really going to work for the customer and really understanding those customers' needs deeply. So that wasn't any one thing, but I think that's how I view the skill set of a product manager.
Okay, we need to clip that, and that was perfect. That like mic drop, Christa's imagery. Like, you're sorry, we see people fall into this trap of like, oh, I'm the pro person, so I have to come up with the idea. It's like, no. You create the environment in which great ideas happen, and there's
exactly.
Oh, yeah. And it's so confusing too, because in industry, we give people titles like product owner.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, I think, really the Achilles heel in the approach versus the title. Everyone wants a box to fit into because it makes them feel safe, makes them feel secure. But ultimately, product managers don't really have a box. We dive into a room, which might be shaped like a box, and we figure out what the most important problem is to solve today, in that moment, in that meeting. And it's never the same. It's never tomorrow looks exactly the same as today. That tool I use, that framework I pulled out of my toolkit yesterday, it's bombing today. I got to go find another one. Yeah. Right? Like, that ability to be adaptive and just have your pulse on the problems you're solving and just follow those. And then go find the skills and the people that you think can help you solve them. But it's no one size fits all. So I love your description, because it was, like I said, it was just chef's kiss. Like,
wonderful. Thank you. I always am slightly distrustful of people who think that they have all the answers. You know, it's like, if you think you know everything, you're never going to seek to learn more, and therefore you can't grow. You know what I mean? And so in product, especially because we are supposed to be the representation of the customer inside of the company, right? And so I might not have the technical expertise to know how to build a particular solution to solve the problem. So I have to rely on my technical partners. I might not know what the thing should look like or what the user flow should look like. I have to rely on my designers. So having that diversity and the openness and willingness to kind of work with other experts and trust their opinions is just huge. It's how the best products are built.
Yes. I agree more. We've heard of so many folks in products saying, like, I was the best product manager when I was brand new and I knew nothing.
Yeah. That's best product manager ever for the first 3 hours of that role.
Yeah, exactly. Until reality kicked in.
And then it all fell apart.
Yeah.
So we have another, I'd love to get your take, a hot take on defining what a product is, because we are, as you know, educators and purveyors of a standard of practice. And a lot of folks would think, well, product might not be for me because products are the things that I buy on shelves, and I don't really connect with that. Can you define for us what you think a product is, Sandi?
Yeah. And this has come up a few times in my career because I've often worked with or led teams that work on internal applications that facilitate perhaps the operation side of things or the administration side of a particular platform. Because oftentimes you'll have a human side and an automated platform side. But I personally would not consider those, like the internal tools and systems, products per se, although you often do need a product manager because they're designed in a similar way in terms of gathering user needs and building a solution that solves those needs. But I think strictly speaking, from my perspective, and this perhaps isn't the textbook definition, but product is a revenue generating offering that solves a problem or a set of problems for external users in a way that makes them want to pay for it. So that kind of relates to the value of product management in a company. Ultimately, we are there to identify revenue generating opportunities that can help bring the corporate strategy to life. So that's the way I look at it. And that's just an attempt, honestly, to kind of narrow the focus of the team, A, and allow us to prioritize our efforts, B. So I feel like that's a bit of a contentious topic, but that's my approach in any case. Do you want me to give you an example of what that looks like at Impact Genome?
Yes, please.
Okay. So basically, our founding team actually created what's called the Impact Genome Registry. And it's basically a taxonomy. They went through thousands of research articles, examined social programs, broke them down into their main elements, and developed a taxonomy with a primary outcome, secondary outcome, a set of activities or components, beneficiary location. And that's like the pieces that create a social program. And so we can standardize social outcomes and the cost per outcome and those types of things. But ultimately, when I think about the product's not the registry itself. It's how people interact with the registry or use it to solve the problems they have. So if I'm a funder, for example, in our funder terminal, we've got a set of tools that help with pre-funding decision-making. So if you're thinking, well, what nonprofit can I support that aligns with my strategy? So we've got a set of tools that allows you to articulate your strategy, then it shows matching nonprofits, and then you can compare and contrast. So that is more valuable because it does a job for the user versus actually just being a database or a registry that they might think, wow, that's interesting and great, but what do I do with that? So it's like you provide an inroad and help them basically create value or receive value, I suppose, from the tool that they're using. Does that make sense from an example perspective?
Totally. And I think, when we think about where we place bets and where we make an investment because we want revenue to increase or costs to come down so that that revenue has a chance to either stabilize or become larger, right? I think all of these things, and that's why I love in your example, you said, sometimes internal tools and these workflows, they also have product managers because we need somebody managing and keeping an eye on those impacts of those internal processes, people and tools and workflows and teams to make sure that we're not blowing up our costs and eating into our revenue and our profitability. So, it can be really confusing for folks to see where they fit and why they feel like they're not on what would be the client or the customer facing side of the product. So my work doesn't matter as much, right? I'm not working on the big shiny thing. Yeah. But I think the key message is like everyone plays a part in the success of a company. And if we want this company to grow, we want revenue to increase, we want the value of the company to increase, product managers are keeping a steady eye on all of those factors, that customer-facing ones and non-customer-facing ones.
Absolutely. Because ultimately, generating more revenue sometimes is related to decreasing costs, right? And so increased revenue, decreased cost, increased customer satisfaction. And so your kind of key metrics that you're always looking at there can be produced with external products or perhaps the internal ones. And I've worked on internal ones. I've worked at ATB, I worked on the customer identity and access management solution. That was very internal facing. It was meant to feed the products that actually went up to end users. But my clients at that time, like my internal clients, were the product managers of the client facing products. And we fed into what they were doing. So, I guess technically that could be considered a product, but I prefer to think of it more as like the revenue generating side of things. But again, I'm willing to be disagreed with on that front because I know there are different views. Absolutely.
There's no disagreeing. I think that honestly, every company has a different story. And that's what I'm so glad that we can invite you on so you can talk about it from your perspective. Because I think, a lot of the coaching conversations that we have with product managers are very much, it's like this in my org. And then we have to say, well, in other orgs, it's like this. And maybe that, our identity within an organization can shift just based on the perspectives that we're hearing of how other people view it. So thank you for sharing how you guys view it, because there's a place for everyone in that topography of how we organize product.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's why product management frameworks are so important, because it's a framework that's meant to be adapted to your particular application, frankly, right? So you can't say this is the one way to do product management. This is the one way to do discovery, or whatever the case may be along the product development lifecycle. But if you've got frameworks and ways of thinking of things and ways of looking at things, then you can sort of adjust and adapt those. And the same goes for agile development processes and so on. It's never about pushing a particular way of doing things onto a company. It's about understanding where you are, because companies are at different stages of maturity, just like products are, and actually adapting your processes to sort of adhere to the framework as best as they can to meet your goals.
Yeah. And I like that you focused on like, okay, we're looking at where we're generating revenue and really getting that viability side of product. And I think a lot of the confusion comes up because you can apply product practices to solve. It's a problem solving framework. It is at the end of the day. So it can get confusing of like, oh, I can be a product manager for a process. But then different companies do need to focus because we only have so many product people. Where are we putting their efforts? Where are we putting the team's efforts? And when you put a guardrail and say it's revenue generating, okay, then that gives us some focus.
Absolutely. Well, and also there's so many ideas out there, right? Like everybody's coming at you with ideas, and they're great ideas, but is it going to make us money? Is it going to help sell the product? Is it going to solve a specific user problem that we know that we have? That's got to be your filter. So whatever prioritization framework you use, you have to be thinking, hi, Monique, you have to be thinking about where you're going to focus your efforts, because you've got limited product management and development resources, most especially. That's where always we have the block, and then focus on those things. So yeah, revenue is an easy metric because of course businesses are in the business of making money.
Yes. And I know I put this question up here because I think it actually really relates to what we're talking about here. So Monique said, hi, Sandy. I will always remember the A2B customer service robot. Could you share your insights on how to effectively balance the competing demands of user experience, tech feasibility, and business viability, which is exactly what we're talking about in the product management process?
Yeah. So we use, and I have used a few times in my career, the RICE framework. So determining reach, impact, effort, and then confidence. I don't like that they've got the C where it is, because typically confidence comes later. But basically you determine how many people is this going to help? How many people will buy it? What will be the reach if you build this thing? What is the effort from a technical perspective? And then what is the impact on it in terms of like what you're going to build and how confident you are in all of those scores? So it is a balancing act. And as you're looking at things, if something is that the customer wants something and it's a huge technical effort, you've got a bunch of other things that are going to perhaps have less of an impact, but you can get done faster. You need to just be, I don't think there's a single easy answer for that. You need to basically kind of score the items that you've got coming in, understand across those three main areas, and then just stack rank them from a prioritization perspective. So we've implemented scoring systems using RICE. So you can literally stack rank the items that you've got in your backlog and start to understand what will have the most value for the least effort, maybe what will have the most value for a medium effort, and what would have a lot of value, but it would be a huge effort. So unfortunately, you have to put those things away. So the prioritization frameworks go a long way in that, and then having alignment within the team on what types of things we work with and don't, and then adjusting if we're not seeing the results that we're expecting as time goes on. So just being really agile. So that's how we typically deal with it. But it's a very complex process. And you've got the added complexity of, your executive team sometimes wanting certain things built. You've got your sales team wanting certain things built. So we're going to close the big deal if we can build that particular feature, but that can be really a whole roadmap. So it can't just be for that one client. It has to be for the majority of clients. So it's a balancing act, and I would say it's ongoing. And if anyone's figured it out 100%, I would love to hear more, because I find that's one of the most challenging parts of product leadership, especially.
Can I tell a really funny story about RICE?
Sure.
I worked at an organization that shall remain nameless at this point. That's actually the story, because it's a safe place for us to share like what happens with frameworks. and also with Rice, because it was a big move within that organization to try and understand the information that they didn't know so that we could have a prioritization discussion that was somewhat a level playing field. And I think that is one of the biggest wins, before I tell you how it went wrong, that Rice does really well. It's simple enough that people can bring in all the details that they have, and you can help them discover what they have yet to discover about what it would take to make the investment in development.
Exactly.
Then once we had the big old list, we had a bunch of folks go in and mess with the scoring systems such that their stuff came to the top. So while I would say to you, humans love frameworks, they also really know how to throw a wrench in them. And so we ended up abandoning it after all that work, again, to go adopt another tool. Some of you may have heard of a piece of software called AHA. That's a road mapping tool. So the prioritization process is as good as the interest of the people that are contributing to it to keep it a level playing field. And I'd say that, like, you know, when we talk about influence and how hard it is to prioritize and focus your teams, be watching for these kinds of behaviors and understand why they show up. And it's because everybody wants to get their stuff done, right? Everybody wants to get their thing in there. And sometimes they'll do it at any cost. So that's my, how we overcame that was really difficult. But it's one of those things in the room, you're like, is this really happening? Is this like...
I've lived that. I know exactly like that experience that you're talking about. But, you know, regardless of the framework you use, I think the value of having a prioritization mechanism in place is that it forces people to be data-driven in their decision-making. So as a PM, you can say, I understand the reach, the impact, and the level of effort on this. Here are my numbers. Here's why I'm prioritizing this above this. And it just gives you a language that's somewhat irrefutable, frankly. Like if you say it's going to take, 3/4 of dev time to build this one feature for this one customer so we can make one sale that's worth 100,000, for example, it's hard to justify when you've got a bunch of other opportunities on the plate. So I think the forcing mechanism of collecting data and then saying why you're prioritizing something over the other is really the value in any kind of framework, regardless of which one you use.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. Wins arguments. I was taught early days in my product career until it doesn't.
Yeah. Until your CEO tells you you're doing something else, and then so it just happens. That's the way it goes.
That's life in product.
Yeah.
Awesome. Can you, while we're still talking about Impact Genome and the amazing stuff you've built over the course of your time in product, can you share with us one of the most rewarding products you think you've ever built, and what was the biggest lesson that you got out of it for yourself? How did it make you feel?
I think. So I'll use an example. I was at a company called Symend, and basically they build software that prevents people from going into debt. So if you're late on your phone bill, for example, their system uses behavioral science to sort of send out emails and communications that encourage you to pay before you go into debt and then get sent to delinquency. So that's sort of the product itself. And I was brought on at the very beginning of the journey to standardize the reporting offering. So prior to that, all of the reporting was actually very ad hoc. Per client, the behavioral science team and the others, the CSMs and so on, were creating reports for a particular client. We needed to standardize this, create a product out of the reports, and figure out what that looked like. So I was brought in at the very start of the process. They were looking at sort of technology solutions at the time. And that was, number one, probably the most exciting thing. It was completely greenfield. It's like, okay, what do we do about this? So essentially what we did was at the early stages, so Andrew Wright, product designer who I worked with actually at ATB, he was with Brightside at ATB for some time. He and I worked together to do user interviews. We did customer journey mapping. We created personas, just got a really strong sense of like what each of our users wanted to know from these reports, and then designed mock-ups of the dashboard and figured out kind of like what the solution needed to look like. Then I got to work with Zico Rajavali. He was the technical lead at the time. He was phenomenal. So he knew data, he knew software, he knew business. So he kind of understood how the pieces needed to fit together. So Zico and his team really helped us figure out how do we build the data structures and the models and implement Looker, is what we did at the time, to bring these reports to life with the amount of flexibility that we wanted them to have. Then Tracy Pozanowski, who I mentioned earlier, she brought in a fantastic product marketing person. So Lila Hislop or Hyslop, I'm not sure. And these are all Alberta folks. So this is the best part about this team construct. Lila came on. She was a product marketing manager extraordinaire, developed really great feature sheets. The value proposition was clear, sell sheets, competitive analysis, like all of the things you need for a successful launch. And then we planned the launch of this, and basically everything came together just so beautifully because everyone had domain expertise. We all trusted each other to lead the areas that we were responsible for and to make decisions that we knew would get us to the success we wanted to get to. And the launch went off super well as a result of that. So I can't speak to the actual success metrics in terms of how it's performed since that time, because I haven't been with that company for a few years. But that was the most rewarding product I've ever worked on, just because of the team that I had and the way that we worked together and the expertise that everybody brought to the table. It couldn't be beat. It was one of the most rewarding experiences I've had in my career.
Oh, thank you for sharing this with me. I think anyone who's been in product long enough, it's like we're always chasing that like one team that when we just all clicked and everyone like was empowered and everyone trusted each other and we could share feedback and everyone just took ownership. And I think every product person's like and anyone on a product team is craving this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I find that's more the case in smaller companies. So at Impact Genome, we're also very small, and everybody wears multiple hats, and they take ownership and they bring their expertise to the table, and they really kind of show up. And those types of organizations where it's just a small team and you have to be scrappy and you have to figure out a solution and how to get it to market, I have to say that's the most fun for me, frankly. Like, I don't think I'll ever go back to a mega corp again, just because of how great it is to work in a small organization with a smaller team. So that's just my bias, but it is a lot of fun. You have a lot more resources. You have a lot more devs. You have a lot more of the things that you sort of hope and dream for in a larger organization, but a lot more complexity too. And you have to get a lot more layers of buy-in from various teams and stakeholders. So there's trade-offs to both, but that was a really rewarding experience just because of the ownership we all had over the success of the product.
I love that. And I really appreciate how you say there's trade-offs in the smaller companies versus the enterprise. When we think about how we guide people in our careers and they have to figure out what is their most favorite part of their job, right? Mm-hmm. What is the thing that gets them jumping out of bed in the morning, like Renee and I do, to do product? Is we are doing it in the environment that inspires us to do our best work. And I think that's so beautiful what you said there, that smaller teams create that environment for you that you feel like that is where you feel the most connected, the most valuable, and perhaps the most inspired to do the best work versus maybe say in an enterprise environment, it doesn't really give you that connection to it the way that makes you thrive. It might be different for someone else, but for you, that's your secret ingredient.
Absolutely. I like accountability. I like being the person whose head is on the line if things need to get done, because I like to get things done, frankly. And it's a lot of fun for me to be empowered to do that and for my opinion and perspective to be respected and being like, okay, yeah, if that's what you think we should do, then make it so. And I will make it so. And that's super fun for me. So that's where I get my most enjoyment, I would say.
I love that. And you just gave me a great Jean-Luc Picard quote there from Stuart. For all of you trekkers on the call, I see you. One of you. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, it's International Women's History Month. So in honor of such an occasion, can you share with us a story of a woman in your sphere? She doesn't have to be in product. She could be anywhere that you feel like is somewhat of a woman that every woman should know at some point in their career.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I've worked with so many women as direct leaders as well as within my network sort of more broadly. But I think the one who stands out for me the most was actually at ATB. Her name was Carrie Leclerc. She was a career banker. Like, she knew banking inside and out, had been at ATB for a very long time. And there was a pretty major reorganization. And suddenly she had product management under her. And instead of sort of feeling the need to sort of be the expert and be the one who knew all of the things, she was really open and humble, to my earlier comment, about bringing on people who really knew product well, bringing on a leadership team who knew product well, asking a lot of questions to understand our world, setting clear goals for where we kind of needed to go, and then actually just being there to eliminate roadblocks and guide us. Because she had banking expertise, but she didn't have product expertise. But she knew how to like guide and empower us in ways that were really inspiring to me, because I knew that my opinion was valued. I felt trusted. I felt respected. If I had issues or roadblocks, she would be the one to break them down. But mostly she just sort of got out of the way and let me do my job, and still was very curious and excited about the work that I was doing, even though she wasn't expert herself. So there's a few things about that I really like. It's just the fact that she had that humility and wasn't afraid to ask questions. Just because she was a leader of the team didn't mean she had to know everything. And then she also just knew that there were a group of people and she trusted the experts to kind of run and provide her with the updates and the information that she needed. So I think she was great. And she also, frankly, when I first came on was like, we need to bring your salary up. You're not at par with the guys, and, this, that, and the other thing. She was very like empowering in that way as well, just from a gender equity perspective. So that was pretty exciting too. And she's awesome. She's one of my most favorite leaders that I've had, female leaders. I've had a lot of great men leaders as well.
As I'm sitting here, I'm going to be connecting with her on LinkedIn, like instantly.
Yeah. And she's killing that.
The action item, ladies.
Now, but she's great.
Yeah. So what you shared there is really incredible when we talk about leadership and product leadership evolving and being shaped pretty much in front of our very eyes, like from a career standpoint, and we're all finding our way. If you could think about that experience with her, and then also just product leadership just in general, what it's like to be leading teams, what do you think as an industry we should be focusing on more to develop our people? And what do you think we are over focusing on, so we should be doing less of?
That's a hard one. I think focusing more on giving people autonomy to make decisions with parameters. So giving them goals, letting them know what we're trying to achieve, but letting them figure out how to achieve those things. And if they need help or mentorship or coaching, providing those frameworks, providing advice, providing input. But I think just being very clear about where we need to get to as an organization and not telling people how to do specific things is, to me, the most empowering way to lead a team, frankly. So I think more of setting goals and letting people know where we want to get to, and less of dictating how people get their jobs done and how they actually deliver on the goals that you're expecting them to achieve.
Amen.
I feel like I'm passing all the questions right now. This is great. Thank you.
It's not a test, but if
it's not a test. And also, we genuinely love what you do. And I think it's inspiring to hear it be articulated from another viewpoint in the ecosystem, from another place and another line of products that we don't intersect with every day. It's nice. And one of the biggest wins of doing these kinds of interviews and sharing this with our community is that people can hear themselves in other people that they don't work with every day. So they don't feel like I'm the only one who feels this way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we want to create an environment where people feel like they can connect and belong to, like, the new language of leadership, for example, which is that let's get out of the way. You tell me what you need, but I trust you. I believe in you. I've hired you.
Yeah.
Go for it. Right. As opposed to, how are you going to do that? And who are you going to talk to? And when's that going to get done? So we are, stepping in the way of that development and that growth just by not letting folks experiment and fail a little. And hopefully cheaply, right? And then support them through that instead of the big losses.
Yeah, because that's where a lot of the learning comes from, honestly, is making the wrong decisions. So trying to micromanage and make decisions for people just doesn't help in their development. And it's also, frankly, a waste of time from a leadership perspective. And also, what I've really noticed is as you get higher in an organization, you will be responsible for functions that you don't have deep subject matter expertise in. So you need to learn enough to know what kinds of questions you need to ask, what things you need to watch out for, ability to weigh the pros and cons of what your team is perhaps telling you. But then you need to actually trust the people who are the experts to offer you guidance, and then be able to think critically about what they're saying while trusting what they're saying, and then make decisions based on the information that's coming from elsewhere. And people won't bring their best selves if they're just waiting to be told what to do and how to do it, frankly.
So it sounds like great leadership and great product management, a lot of the same skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Product management can be applied to so many different things. Frankly, it kind of is shocking to me. Like I think about so many things as like from a product perspective. And, although to the point, I took it a little too far. I was doing an agile boot camp one time, and Kanban, the things to do in progress and done. I thought it was a really great idea to implement this at home for my husband's to-do list. I'm like, we can just have a Kanban board on strange. And he's an architect. He did not take kindly to that, the software architect. He's like, no, you are not product managing me through this process. So, you have to struggle, but that's an example.
I think it depends on your audience. With my 11-year-old, it works like a charm.
See?
And it's like product management runs my house, and I am not ashamed. Although I can see, depending on your audience, whether or not that might be something they'd be into or not. But
I can hear him on his calls talking about product management because he's on the technology side, right? So he's great as an internal resource, but he can't be managed very deeply. I'm going to say.
I love it. So we talk a lot of the great things about product, and some of that we've touched on a few of the challenges. And just from a career perspective, Sandi, we all, I think, hit a point where we think maybe I should walk away from this. Like maybe I just can't get the kind of work that I'm looking for, or I just can't get the feeling doing my work that I've connected with in the past. I haven't felt it in a really long time, and it might be time to make a change in my career towards something different. Can you describe a little bit about that decision tree for yourself? Because I'm sure at some point that's hit you, being mid-stage in the career. What makes you stay with product?
Mm-hmm. That actually did happen to me. And it was right after I left Symend. And I just decided, okay, I'm done with product. I want to go back to my learning and development roots. I have a master's degree in education. I love teaching. I love working with students and just being in that environment. But I wanted to somehow combine it with like technology and innovation so that I could leverage the experience that I'd gathered kind of to that date. So I was applying for sort of L&D type consulting roles, for tech innovation roles. And I was actually late stage interviews with a higher ed organization in Alberta. I won't mention which one. And they were looking for someone to lead their innovation lab. And so the idea is you work with industry to figure out, what are the problems that need to be solved, and then work with the students at this organization to run them through the design thinking process, essentially to come up with innovations. So it was a way to connect industry with students. And I was like, this is a dream job. I can't wait to do this. It's so exciting. Around that time, the recruiter from Benevity reached out to me. And I was like, Benevity, I really want to work at Benevity because, Calgary success story, and they built some cool things. So I was really kind of struggling through this. And I went to the interview process, and they offered me a role in product operations originally. And I thought, okay, well, that makes the decision easy because product operations, super important and necessary, just not what I'm passionate about. So declined that. It was about an hour before I was going to accept the other role. And Kelly, the CEO from Benevity, reached out. And she's like, okay, I heard you said no, but I got this other job. I think you might be interested in it. And it was to lead the teams for the community investment, the granting solution, as well as the cause portal, so for the nonprofit solution. And she was so excited and so passionate about what Benevity was doing, the product potential, the impact that we could have on the philanthropic sector. And I was like, okay, I actually can't say no to this because I wanted to work to do product that was something that was going to enhance society, that was going to do good for the world, essentially. And I was like, all right, it was an offer I couldn't refuse, essentially. So then it was literally an hour before I was going to accept this other role. So I ended up accepting the role with Benevity. And I have to say, I'm so happy I did because it's actually what led me to Impact Genome, where I am now. And this has been one of the most rewarding roles I've ever had. So I think the pivot there, me being, I'm so done with this, to being brought back into it, that fire being reignited, and now being in a role and at an organization where I'm working with so many passionate people who want to change the world. And we are innovating on some truly amazing things. I just couldn't be more grateful for how it turned out, even though it wasn't what I planned or what I wanted at that time. So that's kind of what happened to me.
Such a testament to our pathways and how it's never what we think it's going to be. Ever.
No. And you can plan and you think it's the right thing, but then, events take you in another direction, and you might not understand why you're being pulled in that direction until you do understand. And it's like, oh, that's why that happened. And you might not have chosen that thing, but you're really glad that it did happen. So you just have to kind of trust the universe sometimes.
100%.
Yeah.
How did you know? Because I think a lot of our students, they want to get into product, but then there's other roles out there and they have their background. And we've had students who landed product and they absolutely love it. And we've had other students where product management education actually got them something adjacent and different, and it fits them perfectly. What was that inner knowing for you when you were like, yeah, I got to take this role?
It has to do with for me anyway, the impact that you want to have on the world. So what are your values? What do you value? So I don't think if it was a product working on like an e-commerce site or something, I don't think it would have had that same pull. But I was doing a lot of volunteering, and I was on a board of directors and saw the needs of the nonprofit sector, and just kind of saw the inequity of donations always going to like the top 10 and not enough to these smaller, more grassroots organizations. And I knew that there was a problem there. And so when I started to understand this world of philanthropic software, so grants management, volunteering, employee engagement, and so on, impact reporting, I realized this is a chance actually to change how an entire sector does things and to make things more equitable for the people who need it most. And that's kind of what drew me to it. And that's what keeps reinforcing my passion for what I'm doing today, frankly. So it had to mean something to me. It wasn't just being a product person. It was actually building something that would change the world, frankly.
And how incredible that this role that it kind of fell into led to truly changing the world. Like, we know the work that you've done has changed the world.
Well, hopefully. I mean, time will tell. We all play a small part. I don't think the work that I'm doing will change the whole world, but at least it's contributing to it somewhere. And I mean, it's our founder, his vision, and the way that he wrote a book called The End of Fundraising. And after I first started, I actually read the book, not trying to be a total keener or anything, but it was essentially the origin story of the company. And I'm like, yes, we can do this. These are ideas that actually matter. And it takes a long time to change an industry and to change how people think and to change the status quo. And so I think patience is required, but we're starting to see traction in some really great areas. So we are starting to change minds. I think one company, one nonprofit at a time, and one government agency at a time, I will also say, which is pretty exciting.
So amazing. So if one other sort of prickly bit about product is the role of feedback in our careers and how we manage receiving it, how we give it. Can you share a little bit about growth that happened to you after receiving some feedback about how you were operating with your teams, or a scenario to which you had to give feedback that changed the trajectory of either a product or a team?
Feedback, it's interesting because you're constantly receiving feedback, both positive and negative, about the product. Personal feedback is a different matter, I suppose. I can't think of a specific example off the top of my head. I think actually one example was really helpful. I was kind of getting overwhelmed by the complexities of the politics at an organization, about the number of things that were coming at me, about the inability to get sort of the resourcing that I needed to solve some of the problems. Like, it was a bit much. And so I had a long conversation with my leader about this. And he basically said, you're focusing on the wrong things. Like, what's really important here? And we sort of walked through the process of like, just the simple rubric of like, important and urgent. I can't remember the rubric it is, but basically what's most important and what I need to focus my effort on and what my job is compared to what other people's jobs were. And so that feedback of, I was feeling too much responsibility for things that I had no control over. And so the ultimate outcome of that conversation was focus on the things that are within your control that you can actually affect, and then build on that and let the other things fall away, because it's just going to kind of bring you down and not actually help progress where you're trying to move towards. So that was kind of profound, because I thought my job was to think about everything all at once. And he just really forced me into focusing and just trying to execute on the things that were in my control and not worrying about the rest. And that was hugely helpful. Reduce my stress levels, allow me to like get some things done. Because, you know, sometimes when you've got too much, you can't really progress properly. And I've taken that lesson forward in quite a few situations since then.
I can't tell you how profound that is. That is every product manager. We have had, and I don't know, Renee, you're probably nodding in your head, holy, hashtag me too. Like in our careers, and of course, heaven forbid, we're not considering all the things because we've been told so many times, well, Christa, you missed the thing, you missed that, you missed this, you missed this. So when we're in that environment that we're constantly consuming, holding for everyone, and then we can't focus at some stage of the game because we hit that critical threshold where we can't actually see through it anymore because it is so noisy. And what I love how that conversation, what that did was actually give you permission to drop those things.
Yes.
That you're not going to fail if you're not holding it all. And I think that is the key takeaway. If any product manager is listening to this today and you're having a week where you feel like this is you, because I got to tell you, I'm sure there was a solid decade I was living in this state of mind, if not longer. And had someone sat me down and said, it's okay, Christa, focus just on this stuff. You're okay. Yeah. And it was my leader.
Yeah, it was
would have been a game changer. Thank you for sharing that, Sandi. That was, I think, probably one of the biggest nuggets we've had come through this podcast. That's for people. And I'm sure we've got some product managers in the chat, but thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thank him for that, frankly, because I thought my job was to focus on everything. And I'm like, this is actually too much. And it just really helped to sort of zoom in and focus. So yes.
Yeah. You're so right. I think we've been told in the past, like the product manager is responsible for the value of the product. And that's too much for one person. The team is.
Yeah.
And also their state of mind and their productivity and the delivery date and how we're all feeling. And, you know.
It's not possible. So I think that shifting of the narrative of like, no, and I think it kind of comes from like that product owner title again, that is still hurting us because we can't own what we don't do. So how are we expected? And sometimes we have to let other people fail in their realm so that they can get better, and we can't keep plugging the holes for everybody. So I think just zeroing in on like, what are we really responsible for? If there's a tech problem, it's not us. If it's a delivery problem, if it's a marketing, if it's this, like, we have to trust the people that are doing the work. And that means letting them succeed when they succeed and fail when they fail. And then we move forward together.
Absolutely. And sometimes knowing how to solve a problem is just knowing who to call, who can solve the problem, right?
Yes.
You can't do it all yourself, frankly. And that is the beauty. And that was the example I gave from Symend. It was a team effort. And I think bringing a product to market, supporting it, making it successful, growing it, continuing to iterate on it, it's an organization-wide movement or motion rather. So depending on others and knowing who to call when you don't know the answers is really key, because that's the only way you're going to make it through it, because it's too much for one person.
So Sandi, if you could summarize younger Sandi and sit her down and you had a minute and a half with her, what would you tell her about future Sandi?
I would say, that's a really hard question. So many things, Christa. It's where to even begin. I think I would tell her to not be so hung up on kind of what I think success will look like in terms of getting to the next level or getting a promotion, but rather focusing on how much I enjoy the work in front of me and how much I am respected and by the people around me, frankly, and treated by the people around me. Because those are the two most important things to job satisfaction. Doesn't matter what your title is, but if you're working on something that is interesting to you, that makes you excited to get out of bed, and you're working with people who value your opinion and who trust you as a professional, those are the two most important things. So don't worry about the next level, but worry about the environment you're in now and the value you're getting out of it as a person, like how it's fulfilling you as a person.
I'm going to double down on the emojis and let it do all the talking for me. I'm just loving these new hand actions. Sandi, I can't thank you enough for all this. There's so many incredible things here as takeaways for folks, especially who are new to product. These things that you're feeling, we're with you. We've all been there, focusing on the things that are within your control. Understand what product means in your organization. Understand how value is measured in your particular lane and whatever it is that wherever it is you are operating, whether or not that be customer facing or internal facing, so that you can anchor that to what success looks like, and how you feel every day on the job is also just as important as that next milestone you're trying to reach. Like, we covered so much territory here. Thank you so much for all these incredible insights. Renee, do we have any questions, or
we answered a couple of one of them already. There was one that we didn't answer yet in our last 5 minutes here. Just this one. I would love to hear more about how PMs are involved in budget and revenue decisions.
Oh, I'm seeing this now. Oh, good. Tracy's here. Hi, Tracy. How PMs, well, that varies per organization. It depends how big the organization is, frankly. So from my experience, sometimes you're not really involved in it at all because it's happening at much higher levels and you're kind of just getting informed about the decisions. Other times at smaller organizations, you might be brought into that process because, frankly, the way I see it, product is a way to bring a corporate strategy to life in a very tangible way. So it's often how a company can deliver its value proposition. So by saying, I need the budget to build X, you need to have the rationale in terms of this is the revenue I will bring in as a result of that investment. And so it's often not necessarily involved in the decisions, but providing information to the senior leadership so that they know what to invest in terms of the revenue and the rewards that the company is going to get. So I would say it varies, but that's sort of the dynamic between the two areas from my perspective.
And if it's in your backlog, somebody's put some thought into that already. And I think if I had some advice for younger product managers that are trying to reinvent the wheel around trying to figure out what that revenue is to justify the thing that they want to go after, if it's a part of the strategy that the business has told you they want, they've already done a lot of that digging. There should be some information somewhere as a baseline that you can grab onto that they already feel like the market will bear for that particular piece of work. So knowing that you don't have to be the author of that necessarily, you can go looking to leadership to help you as a jumping off point as to where they came to that. Where did this request come from in the first place? Often is the home of where some of that data may live.
Absolutely.
Well, I think everything else on here is just lots of people love you, Sandi. So lots of this is great. You're so eloquent. We could listen to you all day. I think we could also listen to you all day.
But I see Temi in here, and Temi, thank you for coming, and thank you also for saying that. But you know, one thing I do want to say is when you're mentoring and working with other people in the space, reaching out to let them know what you love about your job, and you know, if they're interested in product management, taking the time to explain to them what it really is and what some of the hard things are about it is hugely valuable, because you don't know the influence you have on other people sometimes until like a few years later in their career. So always take the time to do that. Honestly, I would just want to say, because I've had people do that for me. From outside of my companies, just sharing with me what their job's like and what they love about it. And it has changed the trajectory of where I've gone. And I think that we kind of owe it to each other as professionals, as females, as anyone, honestly, working in product, to just share our experiences with one another so people understand, oh, this is normal, or, oh, you're also experiencing this. Because it can be tough if you're the only product person or a small number of product people within one organization. So sorry, ladies, I just needed to throw that in based on the question I saw in the chat.
Well, we were going to ask for final word.
There you go. Done.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, on that note, this has been incredible, Sandi. I am beyond grateful that you spent this hour with us and our community. The work that you do is incredibly inspiring. We have this internal chosen product fam of people that we would just do anything for. And you're definitely in our camp. And if there is anything that anyone is curious about based on this episode and you want to reach out to us to get more information, please don't hesitate to do so. We're here for you to support your career, and hopefully that we covered a lot of ground around what is a product, what product management means in different organizations, and just some general tips and tricks during your career and things to look out for. And just know you're not alone, and we're here for you. So just in case anyone hasn't told you today, Renee and I are here to say you belong in product. And if you need anything to find your way into product or to get any education or get some support, you know where to find us.
Wonderful. And thank you, ladies, for all you do for the product community in Alberta and beyond. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Sandi.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, rate and review this podcast, and you might find your review in a future episode. Please subscribe to Product for Humans wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. To get more information about Product for Humans and our content, please visit our website at tacit-edge.com, tacit-edge.com. We'll see you next time. Okay, should we do it one more time?
Sweet. Yeah, let's do it.